The morning sun bathes my sprawling ranch in golden light as I stand on the weathered porch, coffee mug in hand. 300 acres of rolling hills spread before me, dotted with oak trees and grazing cattle. The distant mountains form a protective embrace around the valley. This land tells the story of my family better than any photo album ever could. My great-grandfather purchased it with savings from a lifetime of hard work. My grandfather expanded it during good years. My father maintained it through drought and economic downturns. Now it falls to me to continue their legacy. The wind carries the scent of wildflowers and pine as it rustles through tall grass. Birds call to one another from fence posts that my father and I repaired each spring. Every inch of this property holds memory and meaning. The barn where I learned to ride, the creek where I caught my first fish, the hilltop where we buried my parents beneath a granite marker that catches the last rays of sunset each evening. This is not just land. This is my heritage. I spend my mornings tending to the small herd of cattle that provides my primary income. The work is honest and satisfying. No office politics, no rush hour traffic, just the rhythm of seasons and the satisfaction of tangible results. My neighbors are distant enough to provide privacy, but close enough to lend help when needed. We share an unspoken understanding about respecting boundaries and independence. That is the rural way. The sound of tires on gravel interrupts my thoughts. A black SUV I do not recognize kicks up dust as it approaches my house. This is unusual. Visitors rarely arrive unannounced this far from town. I set my mug down on the porch railing and walk toward the driveway, curiosity mixing with caution. 3 people emerge from the vehicle. 2 men in button-down shirts and slacks. 1 woman in a tailored business suit that seems impractical for the dusty surroundings. All 3 carry clipboards. Their expressions hold the practiced neutrality of people accustomed to delivering unwelcome news. "Good morning," the woman says, extending her hand. "I am Margaret Keller, president of the Valley Vista Homeowners Association. These are my colleagues, Robert Chen and Thomas Barker. We are here to discuss your property registration and compliance status." I do not take her hand. There must be some mistake. This is private property. I do not belong to any association. Margaret's smile does not falter, but it fails to reach her eyes. "Actually, according to county records, your property falls within the newly established boundaries of our association. We have been attempting to contact you through mail for several months." Robert extends a document toward me. This map clearly shows the boundaries approved by local ordinance last quarter. Your ranch falls within Section 17B of our jurisdiction. I take the paper, scanning it with growing disbelief. The map shows familiar landmarks, but with arbitrary lines drawn across properties that have existed independently for generations. My ranch sits squarely within a shaded area labeled Valley Vista HOA Phase 3 Expansion. "This is ridiculous," I say, feeling heat rise in my chest. "Nobody consulted me about this. I never agreed to join any HOA." Thomas clears his throat. "Membership is not optional when your property falls within designated boundaries. The county commissioners approved our expansion last quarter. The public notices were published according to legal requirements." Margaret steps forward, taking the map from my hands with manicured fingers. Her voice carries the practiced patience of someone explaining simple concepts to a difficult child. "We understand this may feel sudden to you. However, Valley Vista maintains certain standards for all properties under our jurisdiction. We will need to conduct an initial compliance inspection today." "No," I state firmly. "You will not inspect anything. This property has been independent for over 100 years. No paperwork you produce changes that reality." Margaret's smile tightens. She reaches into her leather portfolio and produces another document, placing it deliberately on my porch table. This is your official notice to register with Valley Vista HOA within 30 days. Annual dues are $4,000, prorated quarterly. After registration, you will receive our comprehensive guidelines for property maintenance, architectural standards, and land use restrictions. The three turn in practiced unison and walk back toward their vehicle. Margaret pauses at the door of the SUV. Failure to comply will result in escalating penalties, Mr. Reynolds. I strongly suggest you review the materials and contact our office promptly. The consequences of noncompliance can be quite significant. As their vehicle disappears down my driveway, I pick up the notice. Official-looking seals and signatures adorn the bottom. The threat feels as tangible as the paw in my hands. They have declared war on my way of life with smiles and paperwork. Little do they know exactly who they are threatening. The notices arrive with increasing frequency over the next several weeks, each one more threatening than the last. Yellow paper for the first warning about unregistered status. Orange paper for the second notice about failing to schedule a compliance inspection. Bright red for the third, detailing potential fines and legal action. I document everything, creating a meticulous file that grows thicker with each delivery. Between tending to my ranch responsibilities, I research Valley Vista HOA. Their website features pristine homes with manicured lawns, nothing resembling my working ranch property. Their regulations prohibit visible equipment storage, require formal landscaping plans, and even specify acceptable fence designs. Implementing these rules would effectively end my cattle operation and erase the character of land that has been in my family for generations. Public records reveal troubling patterns. Valley Vista originated as a small subdivision of luxury homes 10 miles away. Over 5 years, they systematically expanded boundaries, absorbing adjacent properties through legal maneuvers few residents understood until too late. The documents show boundary adjustments approved in obscure committee meetings with minimal public notice. The legality seems questionable at best, operating in gray areas of zoning law. After receiving a formal summons to appear before the HOA board, I decide to address the issue through proper channels. I arrive at their monthly meeting held in a sterile community center conference room. Rows of chairs face a raised platform where 7 board members sit behind name placards. Margaret Keller occupies the center position, her posture rigid with authority. "The board recognizes Mr. Reynolds," she announces as I approach the podium. "You have 5 minutes to address your compliance issues." I place my research on the small lectern. "I am here to question the legal basis of your jurisdiction over my ranch property. Historical county records show no easements or covenants attached to my deed that would permit forced inclusion in an HOA. Furthermore, the boundary extension appears to violate state law requiring property owner consent for such inclusions." Murmurs ripple through the room. Margaret taps her gavel against a small wooden block. "Mr. Reynolds, Valley Vista operates under County Ordinance 47B, which permits community enhancement through designated improvement districts. Your interpretations of property law are quaint, but legally insufficient." Robert Chen leans toward his microphone. "Perhaps Mr. Reynolds is unaware that rural properties without proper management present hazards to surrounding communities. Uncontrolled vegetation, visible equipment, and livestock operations reduce property values for everyone." Laughter ripples through the front rows, clearly HOA supporters brought to reinforce the board's position. I notice how the board members exchange knowing glances, silently communicating in a language of insider privilege. My family has managed this land responsibly for over a century, I respond, struggling to keep my voice level. Long before Valley Vista existed. Margaret's eyes narrow slightly when I mention my family name. Something flickers across her face recognition, perhaps, before her professional mask returns. The board recognizes that heritage properties may struggle with modern community standards, she says with practiced condescension. However, exceptions cannot be made without compromising the integrity of our association. Your registration deadline stands, Mr. Reynolds. This board recommends immediate compliance to avoid further penalties. She strikes her gavel with finality. Next agenda item. Security personnel move subtly closer as I gather my documents. The message is clear. My time is up, my concerns dismissed. As I exit the building, I overhear Margaret speaking with Robert, their voices lowered but still audible. The Reynolds property is key to Phase 4. Make sure enforcement proceeds on schedule. The following week, my sister Catherine suffers complications from her ongoing cancer treatment. The hospital calls urgently, requesting family presence. I arrange for my neighbor Dave to check on my livestock during what I expect to be a brief absence. 3 hours of driving bring me to the regional medical center where I find Catherine pale but stabilized. I remain at her bedside through the night, catching moments of uneasy sleep in a vinyl hospital chair. My phone rings at dawn. Dave's voice carries barely controlled panic. "You need to come home now, right now." "What happened?" "Those HOA people showed up with contractors. They had some kind of emergency abatement warrant. Said you had dangerous fire hazards that required immediate remediation." His voice breaks. "Jay. Ames, they said a controlled burn on your east pasture. It got out of hand. Fire department is here, but the damage." I grip the phone tightly. The oak tree, my grandfather's oak. The silence that follows tells me everything. I drive back with white knuckles on the steering wheel, exceeding speed limits the entire journey. As I crest the final hill approaching my property, the devastation becomes visible. The eastern pasture, the heart of my ranch, lies scorched and black. Emergency vehicles crowd my private road. Smoke still rises from charred fence posts and the blackened skeleton of my grandfather's oak, now collapsed in ruin. Dave meets me as I park haphazardly in the yard. His clothes smell of smoke, his face streaked with soot and exhaustion. "They claimed it was standard procedure," he explains, voice hollow with disbelief. "Called it a vegetation management action, required by HOA regulations. They had paperwork officials just let them proceed." I walk slowly toward the devastation. The oak tree where my grandfather built our family's first shelter lies in charred ruins. The tree that had weathered a century of storms and drought, destroyed in hours by bureaucratic violence. Near its fallen trunk, I find a metal stake holding a plastic-wrapped notice. The Valley Vista logo gleams at the top of the page, untouched by the surrounding destruction. "Notice of emergency remediation," it reads. "Property owner failed to comply with repeated vegetation management citations." This is not enforcement. This is deliberate punishment. This is war. The acrid smell of burned grass and timber hangs in the air for days following the fire. Walking the perimeter of the charred pasture, I catalog the damage with methodical precision. 70 acres of grazing land destroyed. 300 feet of fencing incinerated. Irrigation equipment melted into twisted metal. The oak tree irreplaceable. The financial toll exceeds $50,000, but the emotional cost defies calculation. Insurance adjusters arrive, their expressions grim as they review the circumstances. "Intentional burning by a third party with disputed authority," one mumbles while completing forms. This will be complicated. They take photographs, make notes, and leave me with claim forms and uncertainty. Each night, I sit at my kitchen table surrounded by documents and a laptop. The question haunts me: why target my property with such destructive force? What makes this land so valuable to Valley Vista that they would risk legal repercussions? Public records provide the first thread to pull. Valley Vista HOA shares a mailing address with Valley View Developments, LLC. Digging deeper reveals Margaret Keller listed as a silent partner in the development company. Their corporate website showcases architectural renderings of future projects, luxury condominiums, an upscale shopping center, a golf course. The proposed locations appear as vague designations on a stylized map. Yet when overlaid with county property records, their ambitious plans align precisely with long-established ranches and farms, including mine. The pattern becomes clear. Create an HOA with expansive powers. Force inclusion of targeted properties. Impose impossible standards and crushing fines. When owners cannot comply, foreclose or pressure sales at reduced prices. Convert agricultural land to profitable development. A perfectly legal form of land theft. While organizing my father's office after his passing last year, I had set aside boxes of family records for future review. Now I retrieve them from the attic, surrounding myself with dusty folders and leather-bound documents. My great-grandfather's journal details his appointment to the original State Land Grant Commission in 1925. His son, my grandfather, continued the family's involvement through the 1960s. My father maintained the position through the 1990s, though he spoke of it rarely. Near midnight, I find the document that stops my breath. Beneath the official state seal, my name appears as the current designated commissioner of regional land grants. The position passed to me automatically upon my father's death, recorded in county documents I had signed without fully understanding their significance. According to these papers, I hold a position on the rarely convened State Land Commission that oversees all regional property boundaries and jurisdictions. My hands tremble as I read the scope of authority. The Commission maintains final approval over boundary changes, property designations, and jurisdiction transfers across the state, including, I realize with growing certainty, the very HOA expansions that Valley Vista had implemented. The power they sought to wield against me is nothing compared to the authority I never knew I possessed. Sleep eludes me. At dawn, I call my father's old friend and mentor, retired Judge William Harrison. Despite the early hour, he agrees to meet immediately. His historic farmhouse sits an hour away, its wraparound porch overlooking land his family has owned even longer than mine. Judge Harrison listens without interruption as I explain the situation, his weathered face growing increasingly troubled. When I finish, he walks to an antique secretary desk and withdraws a leather portfolio tied with faded ribbon. "Your father asked me to give you this if you ever inquired about the commission," he explains, placing it before me. "Most folks believe the Land Commission is merely ceremonial these days, a relic of frontier-era governance. That misconception has been strategically useful." Inside the portfolio, I find detailed maps with property designations dating back a century, along with legal opinions affirming the Commission's enduring authority despite decades of dormancy. The Commission rarely meets because few understand its power, Judge Harrison continues, but its authority remains absolute in matters of land jurisdiction. No boundary change, no zoning override, no forced inclusion can stand without Commission approval. And you, my boy, are the Commissioner. He taps a finger on the documents. "Margaret Keller knows exactly who you are. The Reynolds name carries weight in property records. She targeted you deliberately, hoping to force you out before you discovered your authority. How could she know when I did not? The judge's expression hardens. Keller worked in county records for 15 years before moving to real estate development. She has been exploiting gaps in the system, pushing through boundary changes while the commission remained inactive. But she was playing with fire when she moved against your land. For the first time since watching my grandfather's oak burn, I feel a flicker of hope, not just for myself, but for all the property owners suffering under Valley Vista's expanding reach. What do I do now? I ask. Judge Harrison's eyes hold the steely resolve of a man who spent decades separating justice from legality. You bring the commission back from dormancy. You review every boundary change Valley Vista has implemented. And then, my boy, you reclaim what is rightfully yours and everyone else's. The state capitol building stands like a mountain of marble and purpose against the morning sky. I straighten my tie, unaccustomed formal wear for a rancher, and climb the granite steps with determination. The Land Commission office occupies a forgotten corner of the east wing, its wooden door bearing a tarnished brass plaque nearly obscured by decades of polish. Inside, a middle-aged administrative assistant looks up with surprise. Visitors are clearly uncommon here. "May I help you?" she asks, glancing at my boots and weathered hands, markers of someone who belongs outdoors rather than in government offices. "My name is James Reynolds. I believe I am the current land grant commissioner for the Western region." Her expression shifts from puzzlement to astonishment. She rises quickly, extending her hand. "Mr. Reynolds, we have been attempting to locate you for nearly a year. Your father was our last active contact with the commission." She retrieves a heavy binder labeled Commissioner Protocols and places it before me. The position has been largely administrative recently, signing off on routine boundary adjustments forwarded by county offices. But legally, your authority remains quite extensive. For the next 3 hours, I review records of boundary changes approved in my absence, dozens of them involving Valley Vista expansions. Each bears a rubber-stamped approval rather than a commissioner's signature, a procedural shortcut that raises serious questions about their validity. "These approvals," I ask carefully, "who authorized them without commissioner review?" The assistant frowns at the documents. "Various county officers. The system became informal after your father stopped attending meetings. People retire, procedures change, institutional knowledge fades. And Valley Vista HOA's expansions, particularly those in the last 2 years." She pulls additional files, processed through the county planning division, signed by, she pauses, checking the signature, Assistant Zoning Director Thomas Barker. The same Thomas Barker who stood on my porch with Margaret Keller, clipboard in hand. I leave the Capitol with official documentation confirming my position and authority, including the power to review and potentially invalidate improperly approved boundary changes. A weapon far more powerful than the threats and notices Valley Vista had deployed against me. Over the following weeks, I quietly investigate Valley Vista's impact beyond my own property. The stories form a damning pattern. Elderly couple Carl and Martha Wilson, forced to sell their retirement home after receiving $23,000 in fines for unapproved garden structures that existed before Valley Vista claimed jurisdiction. Single Mo. Her Rebecca Torres, harassed weekly about parking her work vehicle in her own driveway, the commercial truck that provides her livelihood as a landscape contractor. Vietnam veteran Michael Chen, cited for installing a wheelchair ramp without prior approval, a necessity after his recent stroke. Each story reveals the human cost of unchecked authority wielded without compassion or context. Each victim provides additional documentation for the case building in my home office. I contact Clara Williams, an attorney specializing in property disputes whose reputation for fighting corporate overreach borders on legendary. After reviewing my evidence, she agrees to represent not just me, but potentially dozens of affected property owners. This is potentially precedent-setting, she explains, eyes bright with the prospect of meaningful legal battle. HOAs operate with almost feudal power in some communities. Your commission authority could reset the balance statewide. Sam Hernandez joins our growing alliance, a surveyor with 30 years of experience whose meticulous work has exposed boundary discrepancies in other disputes. His official credentials will prove crucial for challenging Valley Vista's maps and claims. One evening, as Clara, Sam, and I spread documents across my living room floor, I find myself questioning our approach. Maps cover every surface, property records fill my dining table, and legal strategies consume our conversation. Have I become obsessed with power and control, the very qualities I despise in Margaret Keller? Are we any better than they are? I ask quietly, using procedural authority to impose our will on others. Clara looks up sharply. The difference is consent. They force their authority on people who never agreed to it. You are restoring rightful boundaries and freedoms. Before Sam can add his thoughts, a knock at the door interrupts us. Standing on my porch in the pouring rain is Mrs. Lion Chen, 87 years old. She clutches an umbrella in one hand and a soaked eviction notice in the other. Her traditional vegetable garden, sustaining her family for decades, violates Valley Vista's aesthetic standards. Despite her age and limited English, they have given her 30 days to remove it or face legal action. My husband planted this garden when we first come to America, she explains, voice quavering. 47 years same garden. Now they say criminal to grow food. Looking into Mrs. Chen's eyes, my doubts evaporate. This fight is no longer about my ranch or family legacy. This is about justice for every person whose way of life faces extinction through the weaponization of rules and regulations. This is about protecting the vulnerable from those who view property as merely a commodity rather than a home. Come inside, Mrs. Chen, I say gently, taking her arm. I believe we can help each other. That night, our strategy shifts from defensive to offensive. No more reacting to Valley Vista's moves. The time has come to reclaim what was taken not just for me, but for everyone caught in their expanding web of control. Official letterhead of the State Land Grant Commission arrives on desks throughout the county with precision and purpose. Each envelope contains a formal notice of boundary review signed with my full title as commissioner. Clara crafts the language with surgical precision, not aggression, but correction, not attack, but legitimate inquiry. We request comprehensive documentation for all Valley Vista boundary expansions over the past 5 years, citing specific statutes requiring commission approval. The effect is immediate. County offices scramble to locate records many assumed were properly filed. Valley Vista's administrative office calls repeatedly, messages growing increasingly urgent when I do not respond. Let them feel the powerlessness of unanswered communications, the frustration of bureaucratic silence. Local news catches wind of the situation when multiple county departments receive identical requests. A reporter calls seeking comment about allegations of improper boundary expansions. I provide only the most neutral statement. The Land Grant Commission is conducting routine reviews of jurisdictional compliance. 3 days later, Valley Vista HOA calls an emergency board meeting. The public notice cites urgent regulatory matters requiring immediate attention. The timing leaves no doubt about the cause. This time, I will not attend alone. The community center parking lot overflows when we arrive. Word has spread beyond official channels, drawing dozens of affected property owners. Inside, extra chairs fill every available space. Margaret Keller sits center stage at the board table, her composed expression betrayed by tension around her eyes. Thomas Barker whispers urgently in her ear while reviewing documents. Clara Williams walks beside me, briefcase containing our evidence. Sam Hernandez follows with rolled survey maps Dare his arm. We form a united front of professional confidence against Valley Vista's hastily assembled defense. Margaret strikes her gavel with excessive force. This emergency session will address recent administrative inquiries regarding our jurisdiction boundaries. These routine matters have been mischaracterized by certain parties seeking to undermine our community standards. Her eyes lock onto mine as I take a seat in the front row. She continues without acknowledging my presence directly. Our legal team assures me all expansion phases followed proper protocols and county approvals. When the public comment period opens, I approach the podium. Clara and Sam stand directly behind me, a visual statement of alliance. Good evening, I begin, placing the official Land Commission seal on the podium where all board members can see it clearly. I am James Reynolds, fourth-generation rancher and current state land grant commissioner for this region. The room falls silent. Margaret's professional composure cracks visibly as color drains from her face. The board members exchange nervous glances. My review of Valley Vista expansions reveals concerning irregularities. I continue. Specifically, 27 boundary amendments over 4 years occurred without required commission approval. These include all expansions encompassing previously independent agricultural properties, including my ranch and approximately 40 other family properties. Robert Chen leans toward his microphone. The county planning office approved all boundary adjustments. We have documentation. Clara steps forward. County approval is preliminary, not final. State law is unambiguous. The Land Commission holds binding authority on all jurisdictional boundary changes. No exception exists for homeowners associations. I place our evidence binder on the table. Effective immediately, I am freezing all enforcement actions against properties included in these contested expansions pending full commission review. Margaret recovers her voice, though it carries a new edge of desperation. This is procedural obstruction. You cannot retroactively question established zones. Actually, Sam interjects, unrolling a large survey map across the board table, the commissioner absolutely can. These highlighted parcels were incorporated without proper authority. The boundaries are legally void. Margaret stands abruptly. This is corruption, using an obscure government position to pursue personal vendettas. We will file ethics complaints and seek injunctive relief. Her performance aims to rally the board and supporters, but uncertainty spreads visibly through the room. Several board members lean away from her, creating physical distance from her increasingly volatile stance. The commission welcomes judicial review, I respond calmly. Our first public hearing is scheduled for next month. All affected property owners will receive formal notice, including Valley Vista representatives. Outside the meeting room, a crowd has gathered. Families whose properties were absorbed without consent. Elderly residents facing impossible compliance costs. Young couples unable to afford escalating HOA fees on top of mortgages. As we exit, they approach with questions, documentation, and stories of their own battles with Valley Vista. A reporter from the county newspaper moves through the crowd, notebook in hand. "Mr. Reynolds, is it true the Land Commission could invalidate Valley Vista's authority over dozens of properties?" "The Commission will review all evidence according to established law," I answer carefully. "Any boundary expansion that occurred without proper approval is subject to nullification." As cameras capture the growing assembly, Margaret emerges from the building. She stops short at the sight of residents sharing stories with journalists. Her practiced poise falters entirely as she makes frantic calls in the parking lot, voice rising with each failed attempt to secure immediate legal intervention. "Get Judge Harmon on the phone now," she demands of an assistant. "Tell him we need an emergency injunction tonight. This cannot wait until morning." For the first time since her arrival on my property months ago, I see genuine fear behind her anger. The careful construction of her authority begins to crumble publicly, visibly, irrevocably. A community that existed primarily through threatening notices and compliance demands transforms before my eyes into actual neighbors with shared purpose. Elderly residents speak with young families. Farmers compare notes with suburban homeowners. The invisible barriers of enforced conformity dissolve in the simple act of people recognizing their common struggle. Clara touches my arm, her expression both professional and quietly triumphant. "This is just the beginning. The story is spreading. By tomorrow, everyone in the county will know Valley Vista operated without proper authority." As darken falls, car headlights illuminate a parking lot still filled with people exchanging contact information and organizing for the commission hearing. What began as my personal fight for family land has transformed into a community reclaiming its right to self-determination. "You know they will fight back," Sam warns as we walk to our vehicles. "People like Margaret Keller do not surrender power willingly." I nod, watching Margaret's SUV speed away from the community center. Let them come. This time, we are ready. The attacks become personal and vicious within days. Anonymous flyers appear in mailboxes questioning my mental stability following my father's death. Social media posts suggest corruption in my family history. Whispers spread that my ranch harbors environmental violations that endanger the community. Each accusation bears the invisible fingerprints of desperate retaliation. Judge Harrison calls to warn me that Margaret has approached several retired officials seeking affidavits against the Land Commission's authority. She is pulling every connection she cultivated during her time in county records, he explains. Be prepared for formal challenges. Valley Vista files an emergency injunction questioning my appointment to the commission, claiming administrative oversight invalidates my position. The court denies their request within hours, confirming my legal standing with a strongly worded precedent about appointed positions and inherited authorities. Meanwhile, Sam Hernandez conducts meticulous survey work, comparing Valley Vista's claimed boundaries with historical property designations. His findings exceed our expectations. The evidence emerges methodically: boundary documents with forged signatures, approval stamps from offices that did not exist at the time of filing, parcel numbers that lead to non-existent property records. "These are not mistakes," Sam explains, highlighting discrepancies across the kitchen table. "This is deliberate manipulation of property records. Someone with insider knowledge created documentation that would pass casual inspection while failing any serious review." The smoking gun arrives unexpectedly from a former county clerk who recognized Margaret's name in news coverage. She provides copies of original boundary submissions with penciled notations in Margaret's handwriting, instructing staff which approvals to fast-track and which officials to approach for signatures. The paper trail of manipulation spans years of calculated expansion. 1 month after our confrontation at the board meeting, the State Land Commission convenes its first formal hearing in nearly a decade. The Capitol building's largest meeting chamber fills beyond capacity. Property owners, county officials, media representatives, and curious citizens pack the gallery as commissioners take their seats at the elevated panel. For the first time, I occupy my rightful position at the front of the wood-paneled chamber, the weight of both history and responsibility settling on my shoulders. The other commissioners, mostly political appointees with little understanding of the commission's true power, follow my lead as we call the session to order. Clara presents our evidence methodically, building an irrefutable case against Valley Vista's boundary expansions. Official maps project onto the wall screen, showing the true legal boundaries that exclude most properties the HOA claim to control. Documents reveal the systematic pattern of circumventing proper oversight while creating the illusion of compliance. Margaret Keller sits stone-faced in the front row as her carefully constructed world disintegrates point by point. Her attorney passes her notes she refuses to read, her focus locked on the display of falsified documents bearing her unmistakable signatures. When the state financial investigator takes the podium, the scope of misconduct expands dramatically. Bank records obtained through subpoena show HOA funds funneling into shell companies connected to Valley View developments. Residents' dues and compliance fines directly financed land acquisition for future development projects. A clear conflict of interest undisclosed to homeowners or county officials. The evidence suggests a deliberate scheme to weaponize HOA authority for private development purposes. The investigator concludes. Property owners were forced into an association that functioned primarily as a financing mechanism for commercial land acquisition. Board members present at the hearing physically distance themselves from Margaret, claiming ignorance of her actions and requesting individual immunity in exchange for cooperation. The betrayal is swift and complete as former allies scramble to protect themselves. By unanimous vote of the Commission, all Valley Vista HOA enforcement actions are suspended pending criminal investigation. Properties incorporated through improper boundary expansions are immediately released from HOA jurisdiction. The Commission authorizes emergency notification to all affected property owners. As the gavel falls confirming these actions, applause erupts from the gallery. Families embrace, some openly weeping with relief. Years of oppressive rules, financial burdens, and constant fear lift visibly from their shoulders. Outside the hearing room, journalists surround Margaret as she exits. She refuses questions, her designer heels clicking rapidly across the marble floor as cameras follow her retreat. Her attorney issues a terse statement about procedural misunderstandings that will be clarified in due course. Judge Harrison finds me in the corridor afterward, his weathered hand firm on my shoulder. Your father would be proud. The commission was created generations ago precisely to prevent powerful interests from controlling land against the public good. You restored its original purpose. That evening, as news broadcasts replay key moments from the hearing, my phone fills with messages from property owners sharing their relief and gratitude. The eastern pasture of my ranch remains scarred. My grandfather's oak still lies in ruins, but something profound has shifted. The destruction intended to break my spirit instead revealed the power to protect not just my land, but an entire community. Spring brings new growth to the burned section of my ranch. Green shoots push through blackened soil, nature reclaiming what was damaged. The morning air carries the scent of renewal as I walk the perimeter of the eastern pasture, marking areas for restoration. The legal aftermath unfolds with surprising speed. Valley Vista HOA officially dissolves following the court ruling 2 weeks earlier. Their assets freeze pending restitution to affected homeowners. The state attorney general opens an investigation into financial improprieties, focusing on the diversion of association funds to development projects. Margaret Keller accepts a plea deal avoiding jail time but including substantial financial penalties and 300 hours of community service. Local newspapers report she sold her home and relocated out of state without comment to former neighbors or associates. Thomas Barker cooperates with investigators, providing detailed records in exchange for reduced charges. The county establishes new oversight protocols for boundary adjustments, with mandatory verification through multiple departments. On a crisp Saturday morning, vehicles begin arriving at my ranch before 8. Neighbors park along the driveway, bringing shovels, seedlings, and determination. Children run through tall grass as adults gather near the fallen oak, discussing restoration plans. Some faces I recognize from commission hearings. Others introduce themselves as residents freed from HOA control through our actions. Dave approaches with a trailer carrying a young oak sapling. "Found this at the county nursery," he explains. "Same variety as your grandfather's tree. Thought it belonged here." Working together, we map out new fence lines and planting areas. Conversations flow easily among people.